Hey everybody, Tim Lewis with TimLewisSports.com here. We're talking fantasy football week 3. We're going to start with quarterbacks and we're going to start in Philadelphia. Kevin Kolb will get the nod for the Eagles this week. That means Michael Vick will be his backup. But just like in week 1, where they alternated in and out, I have a feeling we're going to see more of the same this week. I'd stay away from that situation until we see how everything really shakes out in Philly. A lot of changes at the quarterback position. Jimmy Clausen will start in Carolina. Byron Leftwich just got signed by the Pittsburgh Steelers again. He'll compete against Charlie Batch for the starting role. And Ryan Fitzpatrick will start in Buffalo over Trent Edwards. Stay away from every single one of those guys. Jay Cutler, who would have guessed this, has the best quarterback rating in the NFL after the second week of the season. He has a tough test against the Chicago Bears on Monday Night Football. If he passes that test, though, he will be a legitimate fantasy starter for the rest of the season. Matt Schaub is going to keep throwing the rock over and over and over again. Went for nearly 500 yards against the Washington Redskins. Start him. Start all your usual suspects. Peyton Manning, Tony Romo. You have to start Brett Favre, but it seems like he lacks fire these days. I don't know if he's getting too old or if he's just trying to get his feet underneath him after still missing another training camp. But Brett Favre, a little bit worried about him, but he still needs to start. Surprise pick of the week. I said Denver's Kyle Orton last week against the Seattle Seahawks. I'm riding that horse again. Orton and Denver take on the Indianapolis Colts, but that's my surprise pick. We'll see how it all shakes out. Jahvid Best, moving on to running backs, has done nothing but shine for Detroit. You have to start him. If you don't start him, you're making a huge mistake. I expect him to keep touching the ball over and over and over again, especially with Matthew Stafford out of the lineup. Now, Jason Snelling did a great job filling in for Michael Turner in Atlanta. Turner went down with a groin injury. He did come back, was healthy enough to play, didn't actually get into the game because it was such a blowout. So as a precaution, they kept Turner on the sideline. They let Snelling go, and he went. He ran for 129 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also caught 5 passes for 57 yards and a touchdown. Groin injuries are nagging, so I'd say pick up Jason Snelling, put him on your bench as a just-in-case type situation. There's no longer a question in Oakland. Darren McFadden is the guy for the Raiders. Anyone who thought Michael Bush, when he's healthy, which might be this week, that he would come in and get some playing time, he might get some playing time, but he won't get much. Darren McFadden, again, the guy for the Raiders. Brandon Jackson was a popular pickup last week. He doesn't run for many yards, but he will score touchdowns. A little bit iffy on him if you want to start him or not. Reggie Bush broke a bone in his leg against San Francisco on Monday Night Football. He's out 6 weeks. That means Pierre Thomas is about to become a workhorse for the New Orleans Saints. Keep that in mind. He is definitely worthy of starting. The Cardinals optimistic about a Beanie Wells return this week. Tim Hightower's done a great job filling in for him, but keep in mind when you're thinking about Tim Hightower that nearly half of his rushing yards, 169 yards this season, came on one play, an 80-yard touchdown last week. I'd avoid the Wells-Hightower situation until we see how everything shakes out. I like Wells down the road, but not coming off of an injury right now. Chris Johnson will bounce back in a very big way against the New York Giants this week. Like I mentioned before, Matt Schaub is going to keep throwing the rock over and over and over again. That makes Houston's Kevin Kolb a huge option. Grab him if he's available. He went for 11 catches and 144 yards and a touchdown last week against the Redskins. Tennessee's Nate Washington, also an option. He's gone for about 60 yards per game the first 2 weeks of the season. He's also scored a touchdown in week 1 and week 2. I was high on Denver's Jabbar Gaffney as the #1 receiver there. Benefited me in week 1, did not benefit me in the second week. That's because rookie wide receiver Demaryius Thomas, he was injured during the preseason and the first week of the season, but now he's back. He went for 8 catches, 97 yards, and a touchdown against the Seahawks. He and Eddie Royal look like legitimate options for the Broncos and for fantasy football. I'm a little bit worried about Larry Fitzgerald in Arizona. You have to start him just because he's Larry Fitzgerald. Things don't seem to be clicking, but once they do, Larry Fitzgerald will bounce back, whether that's with Derek Anderson or Max Hall as the quarterback for the Cardinals. I want to say keep an eye on Vincent Jackson. Yes, he's suspended, and if he's not traded, won't be back until week 7 of the season. But if he is traded, he will be back after the next week. So if you want to get a jump on your competition, if he gets traded, you might want to go ahead and pick him up if you have room on your bench and keep him there until he can play again. Not if he comes back in week 7. I'd go ahead and wait on that. New York's Santonio Holmes is available after next week. So again, if you have room on your bench, you might want to pick him up. I don't know how much of a option he's going to be for the Jets because they have so many options. Braylon Edwards, Jericho Cotchery, but Santonio Holmes. If you want to pick him up and put him on your bench, now is the time to probably do it. I picked Visanthe Shiancoe on my all-bust team at tight end. It looks like I was dead wrong. I'm not afraid to admit that. Still one of Brett Favre's favorite targets in Minnesota, so go ahead and start him like crazy. My question is, what happened to Tony Gonzalez? The Falcons scored 41 points last week. He had 2 catches for 19 yards. I'm looking for him to bounce back, but Tony Gonzalez, again, I don't know if it's age or what the story is, but Tony Gonzalez, not the fantasy football option a lot of people thought he was going to be at the start of the season like he has been for years and years and years. Mercedes Lewis, still my sleeper pick of the non-star tight ends. Of course, the stars, Dallas Clark, Antonio Gates, Jermichael Finley. Chris Cooley gets the nod in Washington over Fred Davis. So Chris Cooley, an option for you at tight end, especially if he's on the free agent market. Go ahead and pick him up. Kellen Winslow, also a favorite target of Josh Freeman in Tampa Bay. He's just not finding the end zone yet. Probably won't this week because of a tough matchup, but I do expect him to be a viable option throughout the season. If you're desperate, I'd say look at Martellus Bennett of the Dallas Cowboys. Jason Witten went down with a concussion. If he doesn't play this week, Martellus Bennett might be a guy you want to pick up and start on your fantasy football team. You also can't talk tight ends without mentioning New Orleans' Aaron Hernandez. The dude doesn't look like a tight end, but he qualifies as a tight end. He plays the tight end position. He went for 101 yards against the Jets last week. So Aaron Hernandez of the New England Patriots, a guy to look at. Steelers defense, talking about defense special teams. Steelers D, a beast last week. Expect more of the same against Tampa Bay this weekend. The Ravens should also be a lock against Cleveland as well. You want to watch out for New England against the Buffalo Bills, especially with Ryan Fitzpatrick starting at quarterback there. Surprise pick of the week, Arizona gave up 41 points against Atlanta, but they get Oakland this week. Whether it's Jason Campbell or Bruce Gradkowski, I think that it's Arizona's defense might not be a bad choice. Cincinnati's defense might also not be a bad choice. They're up against Carolina. I expect Jimmy Clausen to make plenty of rookie mistakes this weekend, and the Bengals are going to benefit from that. San Diego against Seattle, also a wise start on defense for fantasy football. There are no buys this week, but I'm going to go ahead and start looking ahead to next week. There will be buys next week, so keep that in mind. I'd love any kind of questions you have for me about fantasy football or anything else. You can also send me your feedback as well. You can leave a comment on my blog on timlewissports.com. You can get in touch with me on Twitter at Lewis Sports, Lewis Sports. You can also find my page on Facebook. You should like that as well. I'm talking about all sorts of topics, not just fantasy football. All you have to do is search my name on Facebook, look for this smiling mug, and you can find the page and join in on the fun there. You can also email me at tim@timlewissports.com. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to answer your fantasy football questions or whatever else you have for me. And again, check out my website, timlewissports.com, and good luck in fantasy football this week.